Will Hunting is 20 years old, living in a small, sparse apartment in South Boston. He spends his days working at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, not as a student, but as a janitor. Every day, he mops the halls and cleans the classrooms of one of the most prestigious universities in the world. Professor Gerald Lambeau, a Fields Medal-winning mathematician, begins his semester by writing a difficult theorem on a hallway chalkboard. He tells his graduate students that anyone who can solve it will have their name printed in the MIT Tech newspaper, a recognition that has led many former students to great success. The challenge is meant to take an entire semester. Late at night, after finishing his shift, Will studies the problem. He doesn't use textbooks or fancy equipment, only a bathroom mirror where he writes equations with chalk and wipes them away when they're wrong. His photographic memory and intuitive ability with numbers allow him to explore the solution methodically until he finally works it out. Days later, while mopping floors in the hallway, he quietly writes the correct solution on the board. He slips away before anyone notices. When Lambeau finds the completed theorem, he's shocked. He assumes one of his graduate students cracked it and waits for the mysterious solver to step forward. But no one does. Outside of MIT, Will spend his time with his close friends, Chucky, Morgan, and Billy. They spend afternoons drinking, watching baseball, and getting into trouble. At one game, Will notices a man in the stands, someone who used to bully him when they were children. Later, as the group drives through the neighborhood, they spot the man again. Will orders the car to stop, gets out, and attacks him. The fight escalates into a brawl until the police arrive. In the chaos, Will strikes an officer and is arrested. Back at MIT, Lambeau presents another problem to his students, one that took him and his colleagues over 2 years to prove. As the class buzzes with curiosity, Will is processed through the justice system, facing another serious charge. The two paths, a professor searching for a genius and a young man facing prison, are about to collide. At his hearing, Will chooses to defend himself. Standing before the judge, he confidently cites case law and constitutional rights, arguing for his release. His intelligence is clear, but the judge is unmoved. Will has a long criminal record, including theft, assault, and repeated violations. This time, striking a police officer makes his case even worse. The judge denies his motion to dismiss, sets bail at $50,000, and orders him held in custody. Professor Lambeau, who has been searching for the identity of the student who solved his problems, learns that the janitor is the one responsible. Realizing Will's extraordinary ability, he attends the court hearing and makes an offer. He convinces the judge to release Will under 2 strict conditions. He must study mathematics with Lambeau, and he must meet with a therapist once a week. With little choice, Will agrees. Once released, he begins working with Lambeau on complex theorems, problems that took other mathematicians years to solve. Will completes in minutes. Lambeau is astonished. He sees in Will the potential for greatness, comparing him to historic geniuses who revolutionized mathematics. But therapy proves more difficult. The first therapist comes prepared, only to have Will dismantle him with ease. Will reads the man's published work overnight and mocks it during their session, leaving the therapist embarrassed and unwilling to continue. The second attempts hypnosis, but Will jokes and interrupts until the meeting collapses. One by one, every psychologist gives up, declaring him impossible to treat. Out of options, Lambeau turns to an old college roommate, Dr. Sean Maguire. Sean is a psychology professor at a small community college. Unlike the others, he grew up in the same South Boston neighborhood as Will and carries his own scars from the past. Their first meeting begins like the others. Will scans the office, commenting on Sean's books and a painting on the wall. He dismisses the artwork as amateur and then strikes deeper, making cruel assumptions about Sean's late wife. For the first time, a therapist reacts. Sean snaps, grabs Will by the throat, and warns him never to disrespect her again. The session ends abruptly, and Lambeau assumes Sean will walk away like the rest. But Sean surprises him. He says he'll see Will again, and sets the next appointment. Unlike the others, Sean sees through Will's defenses and isn't intimidated. The following week, Sean changes tactics. Instead of meeting in his office, he takes Will to a park. There, he calmly tells him that for all his brilliance, Will knows nothing about real life. He may know everything about art, but he's never stood in front of the Sistine Chapel. He can recite facts about war, but he's never experienced the battlefield. He can quote love sonnets, but he's never risked his heart. Sean makes it clear, Will is still just a scared kid, hiding behind books and intellect. For the first time, time, Will has no smart reply. He listens in silence. Meanwhile, his life outside therapy begins to shift. At a Harvard bar, Will defends his friend Chucky from an arrogant student who tries to humiliate him. Using sharp memory and quick wit, Will cites exact passages from history books, exposing the student's plagiarism and leaving him speechless. Impressed, a young woman named Skyler approaches Will afterward. She's intrigued by his intelligence and gives him her phone number. For the first time, Will's brilliance begins to open doors beyond the chalkboard. After their first meeting, Will and Skyler begin dating. Their nights are filled with playful banter, late dinners, and laughter. Skyler is studying medicine at Harvard and plans to attend Stanford in California. She comes from a wealthy background, but she's warm and genuine, and she sees through Will's rough edges. For the first time, Will seems to allow someone new into his life. Still, he hides behind lies. When Skyler asks about his family, Will tells her he has 12 brothers and begins rattling off names with perfect recall. Skyler laughs and challenges him, but Will repeats them exactly, reinforcing the illusion. She asks to meet them someday, and Will promises she will, though he knows it's impossible. Meanwhile, therapy with Sean continues. After a session spent in complete silence, Will finally cracks a joke, breaking the tension. Slowly, he begins to open up. He tells Sean about Skyler, but admits he's scared of getting closer. He says she feels perfect right now, and he doesn't want to ruin it by letting her see who he really is. Sean challenges this. He tells Will about his late wife and her little quirks, the way she farted in her sleep, or how she once startled herself awake. Those imperfections, Sean says, are what he misses most. Love, he explains, isn't about keeping someone at a perfect distance. It's about accepting their flaws and letting them see yours. Will listens quietly, and for the first time, he laughs with his therapist. Encouraged, Will introduces Skyler to his friends. Chucky, Morgan, and Billy welcome her easily, joking and sharing drinks. Skyler fits in, but Chucky teases Will that if she ever saw his tiny apartment, she'd probably leave him. Will shrugs it off, hiding his unease. Professor Lambo, however, grows frustrated. He lines up prestigious interviews, convinced Will's genius is being wasted, but Will resists. He even sends Chucky to one of the meetings as a joke, leaving the interviewers bewildered. Lambo sees it as proof that Will is sabotaging himself, and their arguments become increasingly heated. Meanwhile, Skyler is preparing to move to California for medical school. She asks Will to come with her. She doesn't want to leave him behind, but Will panics. He insists she doesn't really love him, that once she learns the truth about his past, she'll walk away. Skyler reassures him that she already loves him and wants to help him carry whatever pain he's hiding. Instead of letting her in, Will explodes. He reveals that he was an orphan, passed between foster homes, beaten and abused by caretakers. He's furious, convinced that no one could truly want him once they know the truth. Skyler, in tears, tells him she still loves him, but Will shuts her out completely. He shouts that he doesn't love her and storms away, leaving her devastated. Afterward, his clashes with Lambo intensify. When the professor urges him to take his future seriously, Will mocks him, pointing out that proofs Lambo's struggles with are effortless for him. Lambo accuses Will of wasting his life. Will counters that he never asked for this path and won't be forced into it. Their partnership collapses under resentment. Even Sean struggles to reach him. When asked what he truly wants in life, Will gives nonsense answers. Shepherding, bricklaying, meaningless jobs. Sean grows frustrated, telling Will to stop wasting his time if he isn't willing to be honest. He ends the session early, sending Will out of his office. Alone again, Will has driven away the people who care for him, Skyler with his lies, Lambo with defiance, and even Sean with evasions. His walls are stronger than ever, but they are about to be shattered. After walking away from Skyler and defying Lambo, Will settles back into his old patterns. He works construction with Chucky, pretending he's content to spend his life in Boston. But one afternoon during a break, Chucky finally tells him the truth. He says Will's wasting his gift, and it's not just his own loss. It's an insult to everyone who would give anything to have his abilities. Chucky admits that his greatest hope is to one day knock on Will's door and find him gone, finally chasing a life beyond their neighborhood. Meanwhile, Lambo and Sean clash bitterly. Lambo insists Will's genius must be pushed into mathematics and high-level work. Sean argues that forcing him will only crush him. Their argument turns personal, with Lambo accusing Sean of jealousy. and Sean firing back that Lambo cares more about his own reputation than Will's happiness. Will overhears part of this confrontation. When he enters, Lambo leaves in frustration, and Sean takes out Will's court file. Inside are photographs of the abuse Will suffered as a child. Will tries to brush it off, saying he used it to grow stronger, but Sean doesn't let him hide. He shares his own past, revealing that his alcoholic father used to beat him and his mother. For the first time, Will sees that Sean understands his pain. Then Sean looks directly at him and says the words Will has never believed. "It's not your fault." At first, Will laughs it off. He insists he already knows, but Sean repeats it again and again until Will breaks. His defenses collapse, and years of buried pain surface. He sobs uncontrollably, clinging to Sean in an embrace. For the first time in his life, Will allows himself to be vulnerable, and someone is there to hold him. Not long after, Will returns for their final session. He thanks Sean sincerely and says he's decided to take one of the jobs Lambo lined up. Sean, meanwhile, reveals he's leaving Boston to travel. They shake hands, and Sean leaves him with encouragement and his phone number. On his 21st birthday, Will celebrates with his friends. Chucky, Morgan, and Billy surprise him with a car they've built from spare parts. It's not perfect, but it represents their loyalty and love. Will is deeply moved. Later, Lambo visits Sean. The two old friends reconcile, setting aside their resentments. Both men care for Will in their own ways, and they finally acknowledge it. The next morning, Chucky drives to Will's house to pick him up for work. He knocks on the door, but no one answers. Peering through the window, he realizes Will is gone. Chucky smiles, knowing his friend has finally left to pursue something greater. At Sean's house, he finds a letter in the mailbox. It's from Will. In it, he writes that he won't be taking the job after all. Instead, he's gone to California to see about a girl. The words echo the story Sean once told about giving up a legendary baseball game to meet his future wife. The film closes with Will driving west, leaving behind the life that confined him. For the first time, he isn't running away from his past. He's moving toward a future, one built on love, choice, and the courage to start again.